There is one food I see in the kitchens and breakfast tables of nearly every patient over 60 who tells me they are trying to eat healthy. It sits in a bowl with milk almost every morning. It comes in boxes with words like whole grain, heart healthy, and high fiber printed prominently on the front. And for decades, we have all been told it is one of the best choices we can make. I am talking about granola and so-called healthy breakfast cereals. Now, before I go further, I want to be very clear about something. I am not here to frighten you or to make you feel that everything you have been doing is wrong. Most of my patients who eat these foods are genuinely trying to take care of themselves. They read the labels. They avoid the obviously sugary cereals marketed to children. They choose the boxes that promise fiber and whole grains and sometimes even added vitamins. The problem is that what seems healthy on a label and what actually happens in an older body are often two very different things. In my 30-plus years of clinical practice in geriatric medicine, preventive cardiology, and clinical nutrition, I have watched this pattern unfold hundreds of times. A patient comes in confused about why their blood sugar is creeping up despite eating what they believe is a clean diet. Another wonders why they feel exhausted by early afternoon even though they had a good breakfast. Another notices that their triglycerides have increased and their belly fat will not budge no matter how carefully they eat. And when I ask them to walk me through their typical morning, the story often starts the same way. A bowl of granola or a whole grain cereal with low-fat milk, maybe some fruit on top. It sounds perfect. It is anything but. Let me explain why this particular food, trusted by so many seniors, can quietly backfire after the age of 60. The first issue is blood sugar, and this is where most people are genuinely surprised. When you look at a box of granola or a so-called healthy cereal, you see reassuring numbers. Perhaps it says 8 grams of fiber. Perhaps it boasts whole grains as the first ingredient. What you may not see clearly is the sugar content, which in many popular granolas can range from 8 to 16 grams per serving. Some are even higher. Now, here is the part most people miss. The serving size listed on the box is often absurdly small. A quarter cup or a half cup of granola is what the nutrition label reflects, but almost no one eats that little. A typical bowl contains 2 to 3 times the listed serving, so that 8 grams of sugar quickly becomes 16 or 24 grams, plus the natural sugars from the milk and any fruit you add. But even beyond the sugar itself, there is another mechanism at work. Granola and most breakfast cereals, even the whole grain varieties, are processed. The grains have been milled, flaked, baked, and sometimes puffed or extruded. This processing breaks down the structure of the grain, making the carbohydrates much more rapidly digestible than they would be in an intact whole grain like steel-cut oats or actual wheat berries. Rapidly digestible carbohydrates cause rapid rises in blood glucose. In a younger person with robust insulin sensitivity, this might not cause significant problems. The pancreas releases insulin quickly, the glucose is cleared from the bloodstream efficiently, and blood sugar returns to normal. But after 60, insulin sensitivity tends to decline. This is a normal part of aging, though it is accelerated by inactivity, excess body fat, and chronic inflammation. The result is that the same food that might have been metabolically benign at 40 can cause more pronounced blood sugar spikes at 70. There is also the issue of muscle mass. Muscle is one of your body's primary sites for glucose disposal. When you eat carbohydrates, a significant portion of that glucose is taken up by muscle tissue to be used or stored as glycogen. But as we age, we naturally lose muscle mass, a process called sarcopenia. Less muscle means less capacity to absorb and handle glucose, which means blood sugar rises higher and stays elevated longer. So we have a compounding problem. The food spikes blood sugar quickly because it is processed. The body handles that spike less efficiently because of age-related changes in insulin sensitivity and muscle mass. And the net effect is higher blood sugar, more insulin release, and a cascade of downstream issues. Those downstream issues include increased fat storage, particularly around the abdomen. They include energy crashes as blood sugar rises and then falls. They include increased hunger and cravings as the body responds to the blood sugar roller coaster. And over time, they include progression toward prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, elevated triglycerides, and increased cardiovascular risk. None of this is written on the cereal box. There is another mechanism I want to discuss, and it relates to inflammation. Many commercial granolas contain seed oils, often listed as canola oil, sunflower oil, or vegetable oil. These oils are high in omega-6 fatty acids. In appropriate amounts, omega-6 fats are necessary and not harmful. But the modern diet already contains far more omega-6 than our bodies evolved to handle, and excess omega-6 intake relative to omega-3 is associated with increased inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation is increasingly recognized as a driver of nearly every age-related disease. Heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cognitive decline, arthritis, even some cancers. When you eat granola regularly, you are not just getting sugar and processed carbohydrates, you are often getting a daily dose of inflammatory oils as well. Now let me address the gut. As we age, digestive function changes. Stomach acid production often decreases. The motility of the digestive tract can slow. The composition of the gut microbiome shifts. These changes affect how we process and respond to different foods. Granola, with its combination of processed grains, added sugars, and often dried fruits, can be difficult for many older guts to handle optimally. The sugars can feed less beneficial bacteria, contributing to gas, bloating, and discomfort. The fiber, while present, is not the same as fiber from whole vegetables or intact grains, and in some people it can cause more irritation than benefit. I see many patients who have morning bloating, irregular bowel movements, or afternoon digestive discomfort. When we examine their diets, the breakfast granola or cereal is often a contributing factor. There is also the question of sleep. Many seniors eat their granola at dinner or as an evening snack, believing it to be a light, healthy choice. But the blood sugar spike from an evening serving of granola can interfere with sleep quality. It can trigger nighttime urination as the kidneys work to clear excess glucose. It can cause blood sugar to drop during the night, leading to waking with anxiety or a racing heart. Sleep is foundational to health at every age, but particularly after 60. Poor sleep accelerates cognitive decline, impairs immune function, worsens blood sugar control, and increases fall risk. Anything that consistently disrupts sleep deserves scrutiny. Now, how do you know if this is happening to you? Let me give you a practical checklist, the kind I use with my own patients. Consider whether you experience fatigue or brain fog in the late morning or early afternoon, even when you feel you have slept well and eaten a good breakfast. This pattern often indicates blood sugar is spiking after your morning meal and then crashing. Notice whether you feel shaky, irritable, or desperately hungry by mid-morning. This is another sign of blood sugar instability, the body signaling that glucose has dropped and it needs more fuel. Pay attention to cravings, particularly for sweets or more carbohydrates. When blood sugar is unstable, the body often demands quick sources of glucose, creating a cycle that is difficult to break. Consider your sleep quality. Are you waking at night, particularly to urinate? Do you wake feeling unrested despite spending adequate time in bed? Evening eating patterns, including that healthy-seeming granola, may be a factor. Notice digestive symptoms. Bloating, gas, heartburn, or irregular bowel movements that seem to cluster around certain meals can indicate that a particular food is not agreeing with your system. Look at your lab values over time. Are your fasting glucose or hemoglobin A1C levels creeping up? Are your triglycerides elevated? These metabolic markers often respond to dietary changes, and a food you think is healthy may be contributing to unfavorable trends. Finally, consider inflammation. Do your joints feel stiffer on some days than others? Does your overall sense of well-being fluctuate in ways you cannot explain? While many factors influence inflammation, diet is one of the most modifiable. If several of these resonate with you, it may be worth reconsidering your breakfast choices. Now here is the part that matters most. What do you do instead? I am going to give you 3 levels of change, from the easiest swap you can make today to a more complete long-term approach. The easiest swap is to dramatically reduce your portion of granola and add protein and fat to your breakfast. If you love granola and cannot imagine giving it up entirely, use 2 tablespoons, not a full bowl, as a topping over plain Greek yogurt. The protein in the yogurt slows digestion and blunts the blood sugar spike. The fat helps with satiety. You still get the taste and crunch you enjoy, but the metabolic impact is much gentler. This is a change you can make tomorrow morning. A better swap for this week is to replace the granola entirely with foods that provide more stable energy. Consider eggs in any form, which are affordable, easy to prepare, and provide excellent protein and fat with zero blood sugar impact. Pair eggs with vegetables if you enjoy them, or with a slice of whole grain toast that is truly whole grain, meaning you can see intact grains and seeds, not a fluffy processed slice. Another option is steel-cut oats, which are far less processed than granola or instant oatmeal. They take longer to cook but can be made in large batches and reheated. Topped with nuts, seeds, and a small amount of berries, they provide fiber and sustained energy without the blood sugar spike. Greek yogurt with nuts and seeds is another excellent breakfast. Choose plain, unsweetened yogurt and add your own toppings. This way you control the sugar content entirely. The best long-term routine is to build your breakfast around protein first. This is a principle I emphasize with nearly all my older patients. Protein in the morning supports muscle maintenance, which we discussed is critical for glucose handling. It provides sustained energy without blood sugar spikes. It reduces cravings throughout the day, and it supports overall metabolic health. A breakfast of eggs with vegetables, or Greek yogurt with nuts, or even leftover protein from dinner with some avocado sets a completely different metabolic tone for the day than a bowl of granola ever could. I also want to give you a timing rule, because when you eat matters as well. If you insist on having granola occasionally, the best time is after a meal that contains protein and fat, not first thing on an empty stomach. When you eat protein and fat first, you slow gastric emptying and reduce the blood sugar spike from carbohydrates that follow. Never eat granola alone, particularly in the evening. The blood sugar impact on an older metabolism, especially before sleep, is simply not worth it. What you pair with carbohydrates matters enormously. If you do eat granola, combine it with a significant source of protein and fat. 2 tablespoons over Greek yogurt with some walnuts is reasonable. A full bowl with skim milk and banana is a setup for a blood sugar roller coaster. Avoid pairing granola with fruit juice, which adds more rapidly absorbed sugar and makes the spike even worse. Let me share a few patient stories that illustrate these principles. I had a patient, a woman of 72, who came to me frustrated because her hemoglobin A1C had risen from the normal range into pre-diabetic territory over 2 years, despite what she described as a very careful diet. She exercised regularly, avoided obvious junk food, and prided herself on her healthy breakfast of granola with low-fat milk and sliced banana. When we examined her morning meal closely, the picture became clear. Her typical serving was about 1.5 cups of granola, which came to roughly 60 grams of carbohydrates before adding the milk and banana. The total glycemic load of her breakfast was enormous. We made changes gradually. She switched to plain Greek yogurt with a small sprinkle of granola for crunch and some berries. We added a hard-boiled egg on the side. Within 3 months, her A1C had dropped back into the normal range. Her mid-morning energy improved. She reported feeling more stable throughout the day, less prone to cravings, and more satisfied after meals. She was eating less volume, but she felt better. That is often the paradox of blood sugar stability. Another patient, a man of 68, came to me with chronic afternoon fatigue that was affecting his quality of life. He had seen multiple specialists and undergone extensive testing. Nothing obvious was found. When I took a detailed dietary history, his breakfast stood out. Every morning, he ate a bowl of whole grain cereal with skim milk, believing this was the heart-healthy choice he had heard about for years. We changed his breakfast to eggs with vegetables and a small piece of whole grain toast. Within 2 weeks, he reported that his afternoon crashes had largely resolved. He had more sustained energy. He was sleeping better at night. He was surprised that such a simple change could make such a difference. But this is often how it works. The body responds to what we give it, and sometimes removing an irritant is more powerful than adding a treatment. A third patient, a woman of 75, was struggling with stubborn belly fat and elevated triglycerides despite being careful about eating fat. She avoided butter, used skim milk, and chose low-fat options whenever possible. Her morning granola was a low-fat variety specifically marketed as heart-healthy. But that low-fat granola was high in sugar and processed carbohydrates, which were driving her triglycerides up and contributing to insulin resistance and abdominal fat storage. We shifted her toward a higher protein, moderate fat breakfast with far fewer processed carbohydrates. Over 6 months, her triglycerides improved, her waist measurement decreased, and she reported feeling more energetic and less bloated. She had been afraid of fat for decades, following advice that made sense at the time but has since been revised. Learning that quality protein and healthy fats were not her enemy, but that processed whole grain products might be, was a significant shift in her thinking. Now let me give you a 60-second summary of everything we have discussed so you can remember the key points easily. Granola and most breakfast cereals, even those marketed as healthy, are processed foods that spike blood sugar rapidly. After 60, your body handles these spikes less efficiently due to age-related changes in insulin sensitivity and muscle mass. The result can be fatigue, cravings, weight gain, worsening blood sugar numbers, and increased inflammation. If you currently eat granola or cereal regularly, consider reducing your portion dramatically and adding protein and fat to your breakfast. Better yet, build your morning meal around protein first, using foods like eggs, Greek yogurt, or other whole food protein sources. If you do eat granola occasionally, do so in small amounts, paired with protein and fat, and never on an empty stomach or in the evening. The metabolic difference between a blood sugar spiking breakfast and a protein-forward breakfast is significant, and over time it affects your energy, your weight, your lab values, and your overall health trajectory. Small changes in what you eat in the morning can have large effects on how you feel for the rest of the day and how you age over the years ahead. Now I would like to hear from you. Please share in the comments your age and where you are watching from. I am always interested to know who is part of this community. And tell me, which healthy food do you eat most often that you have never questioned? Is it granola, yogurt, something else entirely? I find that the foods we trust the most are often the ones worth examining most carefully. This is not about fear or deprivation. It is about making smarter choices that match what your body actually needs after 60. You have done the hard work of trying to eat well. Now it is about refining that effort so it truly serves you. If you found this helpful, please consider subscribing. I share research-based guidance for adults over 60 who want to stay independent, clear-headed, and energetic for as long as possible. If you have diabetes, kidney disease, or are on medications like blood thinners, please discuss any significant dietary changes with your doctor. These conditions require personalized guidance that goes beyond general principles. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next discussion.